Welcome to the CCTA Wake-Up Call, and thank you for joining with us. Presented by the Coastal Carolina Taxpayers Association. By the way, folks, I'm going to give you a quick heads up. Right now, if you go to cctaxpayers.com and right up on the title bar, you're going to see 2024 primary election. We have interviewed by mail or by email, interviewed a number of the candidates running in the primary election, and you can get to see their answers at that site. Again, cctaxpayers.com. Good morning, or good morning, or good afternoon, whichever, or even good evening. I'm Bob Griswold.
Mary Griswold.
Kim Fink.
Pat Park.
Glenn Fink.
Alan Harrop.
Well, go, Mary.
We're recording this on Wednesday, and yesterday the verdict came down on a school shooting in Detroit, Oxford High School, and the mother of the school shooter has been found guilty of involuntary manslaughter, and she will be sentenced on April 5th. She faces up to 60 years in prison. And the jury deliberated 11 hours, and they felt that she was responsible enough to be charged with involuntary manslaughter. This is the first time a parent has been charged in this kind of a crime. I'm a little bit concerned about it because it doesn't make sense. To me, it's on the same level. If you bought your high school son a fast car and you knew he drank and he killed somebody in a drunk driving accident, would you be held responsible? I don't know. It seems to me it seems to be a stretch.
Well,
What state is that?
Michigan.
Michigan.
Well, I'm going to go astray for a second. Let's go up to New York, where Alvin Bragg is trying to still charge people that have not used masks, but they let the people that beat the cops go out. So it's really up to whoever the prosecutor is in that area.
Right. The prosecutor has absolute discretion to take a case or not. Can't force them.
Alan, with your psychology stuff, what's your opinion?
Well, I know historically in the therapeutic professions, the prediction of violence has been problematic. And first of all, the accuracy of prediction of violence is very, very low. And the only cases that I can recall where a professional has been held accountable, and I've never seen one charged with manslaughter, like involuntary manslaughter. Of course, in these cases, the person who was being charged, as in this case, she did not pull the trigger. She didn't kill anybody. Anyway, so what the point is that it's very difficult to predict who's going to be violent. A lot of people make threats and never follow through on them. And a person's mental stability. You can't expect a lay person, even a mother, to know the extent of which that person's disturbance might lead to violence or aggression. And so I think that's very difficult to do. And I think this opens up Pandora's box, as Mary's mentioned. There's many other cases where a child's behavior becomes illegal, damaging, and whatever, and you're going to start holding parents accountable for that? That's leading down a slippery slope that I don't think we should be going down.
Well, the issue becomes broader when you look at the example that Mary brought up. You buy a car for your kid, he's a problem drinker, he ends up in an accident, and he kills somebody. This is the same set of facts that this lady was looking at. The case seemed to turn on the fact that she gave him the gun, or she bought the gun for him, and she's the last one to handle the gun, but that she read his notebooks where he was making all these threats and problematic postings. So there have been cases of school shooters where they had the same kind of notebooks, but mom and dad hadn't read them. Now that's a pretty slim distinction to put somebody in 60 years prison for a parent in a first case in the U.S., and I hope this case doesn't become a precedent for other states. You said this happened in Michigan?
Yes.
In Michigan. This manslaughter usually or always requires intent to do the bad act. Involuntary manslaughter doesn't have that same kind of intention. So she didn't intend for anybody to die, but they ended up dying anyway, and there was something she apparently could have done to prevent it.
But
I hope it
doesn't any kind of manslaughter charge, doesn't it require the person charged to have actually committed the act that will resulted in the person's death?
As far
Pulled the
as,
trigger, drove the car, or, erratically or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
that the person being charged actually was responsible for the death.
Or how about
And I don't see that in this.
How about handing out the fentanyl pills? I mean, is that a manslaughter or is that a murder? If you got a drug dealer that hands out the fentanyl pills to somebody else, they don't know what they're going to don't know what they're going to do with those
yeah,
pills.
I think the fact that we can come up with all these examples say that this is down the slippery slope, it's too wide, it's a problematic thing, and for parents.
Additionally, with that, I would worry that it's going to open up Pandora's box with more of the red flag things coming up, because what's going to keep a student who doesn't like a student from saying, hey, Mom, Joe Schmo over there said he was going to kill some people? I mean, there's got to be some evaluation by somebody in a professional.
Well, when you're talking the red flag laws, and again, red flag laws like, quote, the do not fly list. How do you ever get yourself off of a red flag or a do not fly list? You can't get yourself off because you don't know who charged it.
Correct. You can't defend yourself.
Yeah.
I could picture people going through divorces doing that all the time, just like you do in a divorce. You would make a false claim of, say, abuse or infidelity to take your heat off of somebody, put it on somebody else, make yourself look better, or just to get even. But that's going on in the bullying on the social media with the sexting and.
I used to do divorce law. You can't imagine what they accuse each other of.
Oh, yeah.
The other part, too, they've put this on the mother. What about the school? What about the school's role in spotting this, or in some way dealing with this child, or some way isolating this child so he couldn't do harm? I mean, or having his backpack checked every day.
Well, I think Alan brought up the pertinent point, which is, what did you say, Alan, that the prediction of violence is low?
Very, very difficult to do. Over predictions usually occur. And I did these throughout my 30-year career, trying to predict people who were getting out of prison, what their behavior would be like. Very low percentage of success in doing that. And for some to expect a parent to be able to make that assessment is totally absurd, in my opinion.
Well, there's an article online that says that prosecutors had charged Crumbly's parents, who evidently bought their son this weapon as a gift. They failed to prevent the attack despite school officials warned him that morning of the shooting that he was showing concerning signs, and that the school had asked the Crumblies to take their son for mental health care on that day. But the parents said that they had to go to work and that they had arranged for that later.
Well, how
so
many?
That's what they're using. They're saying that the school had warned the parents and the parents didn't do anything. So, it's passing the buck there, because you got to blame somebody.
Well, the FBI passes the buck. How many times have we heard about a school shooter, and then we see the FBI knew about this person?
Absolutely.
So let's all sue the FBI.
I agree. And NSA and
The rest of the crew.
Yeah.
Well, the danger here is the precedent that it may set. Maybe some people at this table have raised perfect children. I'm not guilty of that.
Guilty.
I mean, I did what I could, and they
Not
turned out
guilty.
turned out pretty well in spite of me.
Nor has she raised a perfect husband. But
Well, that's a whole other story. But I mean, you can only do your best. And at what point is the child responsible for their own behavior?
Did you read about the
Yes,
kid
and
that's been selling swats around the country?
Selling what?
Swats.
What's that?
That's where somebody makes an anonymous phone call
Oh,
and the SWAT
swatting.
team shows up
Oh.
at your house. They call
Oh.
in and say there's been a shooting at Joe Blow's house, and then the whole SWAT team shows up.
They come and break down your front door, and you're sitting there in your underwear watching a football game. Yeah.
Right.
That's been used against a lot of conservative politicians. That's been used against a lot of conservative bloggers.
Well, this guy was cheap. It was $40 to SWAT. Let's see, to SWAT somebody, and $75 for a different kind of SWAT. And he did it all over the country. I mean, he swatted people. It's easy to make calls from wherever you are. He's 13, I think.
Wow.
See, and then you get this issue about the age. Here we are saying how old's the shooter at the time?
I don't know.
I think he was 15 and he just turned 17.
Okay, 15. Okay, he was 15. Okay. And what we're saying is he's not responsible for his behavior. That's what we're basically saying. We're going to blame it on his parents. Okay. Now, at the same time, we've got this transgender movement that want to allow these
11-year-olds.
permanent altering drugs and surgeries to kids that are 8, 9, 10 years old. We're giving them that authority to do that to themselves.
So which way is it?
Without parental knowledge.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So which way is it? Are the parents responsible or are they not?
And that's the dilemma that we're setting up now who is responsible for the children? Folks, we're going to take a quick break to hear from our sponsors and supporters. Again, thank you for staying with us. This is the CCTA Wake Up Call.
At Professional Auto Service, keeping vehicles in top form and running well isn't just their business, it's the passion of folks who work there. If baling and wire and duct tape is good enough, don't go near them. But if you take pride in your vehicle and reliability is important, go to 2215 Country Club Road in New Bern and let Professional Auto take care of your vehicle. You'll be pleased. That's Professional Auto Service, Country Club Road, New Bern.
Moore's Old Time Barbecue is slow cooked and smoked over hickory in the tradition of the Moore's family for over 70 years. Moore's also serves fried chicken, cooked to order seafood, and homemade side dishes. Open 7 days a week in New Bern, Winterville, Morehead City, Swansboro, and Jacksonville. Moore's will cater and deliver anywhere you want your truly traditional barbecue and fixings delivered. And remember, if it's not Moore's, it's less.
The County Compass is a rapidly growing, free weekly newspaper throughout eastern North Carolina. At the County Compass, we believe small business is the future of our great nation. Many small business owners have discovered that an ad in the County Compass each week is the most effective, the most affordable way to reach thousands of readers from all walks of life. At the County Compass, we focus entirely on local and regional news, coverage of important issues that directly affect your life. At the County Compass, we love our readers and we love our advertisers. This Thursday and every Thursday at more than 750 distribution points throughout eastern North Carolina, pick up your free copy of the County Compass newspaper.
Since 1952, the North Carolina Fisheries Association has been working to ensure access for fishermen and consumers to enjoy fresh local seafood. The North Carolina Fisheries Association is for fair, science-based fisheries management for commercial and recreational fishermen. If you agree with this philosophy, become a member. For more information, log on to ncfish.org. For fresh North Carolina seafood, there's no better place than B&J Seafood, Highway 70 East in New Bern.
Welcome back, and thank you for listening to our supporters and sponsors. Now, Mary, go for it.
As we all know, ad nauseum, this is an election year. And things always get a little strange in an election year. And the Blaze actually reported this. A group of MSNBC reporters went down to Charleston, South Carolina, into a barber shop with mainly a black clientele. And they asked the people in the barber shop who they were voting for. One of them, I love this quote, he said, "I just think that Donald Trump, in spite of all the craziness he may have in his head, reading some of the things that he talks about with business, I kind of agree with him as far as business-wise, because I'm trying to grow my business. As far as Biden, I haven't seen Biden really care about business like that." So that's one black voter who's going over to Trump because he wants to start a business and create generational wealth. Another one said, "A lot of my friends, we only voted once, and Trump is kind of all we know, Trump and Biden. And they're like, well, we were broke with Biden, we weren't with Trump." And that's kind of the thing that I'm hearing over and over again. And the comment that was made in 1992 by James Carville was, "It's the economy, stupid." The Trump economy was very different than the Biden economy. During the Trump administration, the middle class grew and the lower class shrunk. During the Biden administration, the upper class has grown, the middle class has not grown, and the lower class has grown. The middle class has been hurt by Biden. And one of the things that made the difference was that President Trump deregulated. He got rid of a lot of government regulations that allowed businesses to thrive, and that's why the economy grew. He got rid of, in 2020, 145 deregulations. He deregulated 145 things, and he put in place 45 regulations. That's a ratio of 3.2 to 1.
Which is what he had promised.
Yes. So that was why the economy flourished under Trump, and a lot of voters have suffered under the Biden economics, despite that they're telling you that the economy's in great shape. Those of us who go to the grocery store and the gas pump might want to argue that one.
The black residents in the city of Chicago are up in arms because their mayor, although he's the mayor of a sanctuary city, he's been asked to undo the sanctuary city status because they're being overwhelmed with migrants. The black people are telling him, "We're not going to vote for you. We're not going to vote for Democrats. They haven't done anything for us. You're not taking care of us. What about American residents that are here, have no jobs, have no homes, and yet you're giving the migrants all of this money and housing, et cetera." The mayor, whose name is Brandon Johnson, he's black, so this isn't a racial issue between the two of them. And he had promised to go down and visit the border, and when he was asked about it, he made plans to go and he canceled them. And when he was asked about it recently, he said he can't go because he's busy and he has, I'm doing all this with a black wife raising 3 black kids. I'm not sure what the color of his wife or his kids have to do with whether or not he can take time to take a 1 to 2 day trip down to the border. But it's a pretty poor excuse.
What would his trip to the border accomplish?
Well, keep a promise. He promised that he would go down there and see it for himself. And if he doesn't want to keep his promise, he should just say so instead of saying, "It's because I have a black wife and black kids."
I think the thing that aggravates me more than anything about the fact that these illegal immigrants are being handed credit cards and money, and in Massachusetts, many of the hotels have closed down because they don't have room for the public anymore. What about all the homeless veterans on the street? Where should our first obligation be?
To our country.
To our people, to the people who are here legally.
Well, you remember Trump said America first, and they've turned that into some kind of Nazi pronouncement.
And it's not.
No.
It's how you survive as a country. And I don't know that we survive as a country with the number of illegal immigrants that we have in the country right now.
Well, you know,
More
the issue about the percentage of blacks that might be interested in voting for Trump, they had a poll they announced the other day where the percentage was up to 21% of the black people that were that participated in the poll, which that's much higher than any Republican has ever even dreamed of getting with the minority, with the blacks.
Well,
and it's part, like you said, it's an economic thing. It's also a crime thing, like we're talking about.
Yes.
Because in these inner cities, who are the potential victims? And you have like the mayor in New York, he stood up at a meeting yesterday and he looked around and he said, look at all the people here who are running this city where I've never seen so much chocolate in my life. And that's the term he used. And the people, I think, are beginning to understand he is running New York into the ground. And he might be happy because most of his staff are black like he is, but I don't think the typical voter who lives in New York is happy with what's going on. You had the
Again.
police beat up the other day, and like Bob said earlier, they arrest 4 people, they let them out, and they leave the state, and they move to California.
Well, they
travel
got
to
arrested in
California.
Phoenix. They did get arrested in Phoenix.
But they should never have been let out, is the
I
point.
agree.
Well,
But everybody goes to the
charity
grocery
that helped
store.
them come was paid to transport them west.
Yeah, but everybody goes to the grocery store and the gas pump. I mean, everybody has to eat. And even though inflation may have slowed, we've still got, from the time that Biden took office, that cumulative inflation. So, okay, maybe it was only 2% last month or whatever, but it's up to 15 or 16% overall.
It's also jobs, though. It's also the low-paying or the entry-level jobs that are affected because you've got your underground economy with the babysitting and the construction and the cement layers and the restaurant workers, all the undocumented workers who are taking the even lower than minimum wage job because the business can afford to pay somebody who's not documented cash or under the table versus having to supply the legal
FICA tax and
right,
that whole thing.
Right.
And the legitimate job numbers, well, I say legitimate, they're not legitimate, but the job recovery numbers, when they break it down and you see the number of jobs that are actually part-time jobs and not full-time jobs, any recovery, first off, the original recovery was just the COVID people going back to work. That's not really recovery. And then from that point on, it's only been part-time jobs.
And you know, this issue about, you raised the impact of how the country can manage with this percentage and this high number of illegal aliens. These people right now are living on the taxpayer, like you mentioned. They're getting these credit cards in New York, $1,000 a month credit card. There was a place in Massachusetts, they were staying at a hotel that, like you said, was closed down to the public. They were getting breakfast, they were getting lunch, they were getting dinner served to them. All this thing that we're paying for. Now, what's going to happen at some point when that stops? Where are these people going to make a living? What are they going to resort to? What they're doing in a lot of these cities, they're forming gangs, they're stealing things, like they were stealing things in New York City and then transporting them to Florida to dispose of them. So they're going to organize into criminal gangs to support themselves. And, you know, Trump's the only one I've heard who has a solution for it. Deport them.
Amen.
Eisenhower did it in the 1950s. It's going to have to be done again. And this stuff about waiting 8 or 9 years before they're even heard on a hearing about their asylum seeking is totally absurd.
Yeah.
If you can find them.
If you can find them, yes, yes.
And the unaccompanied minor number I heard a number yesterday, and I don't even remember what it was, but it was really high. And these are kids that they document as they come in, but nobody has any idea where they are now.
Yeah.
And then
We were in a situation in Massachusetts where we had done a church service with a group of Messianic Russian Jews who had a community in Springfield. And this group of people included physicists, scientists, doctors, every high-level profession in Russia that you could think of. They were working factory jobs because they didn't speak English.
They didn't
They
assimilate.
had never assimilated. And the ability that they had, that they could have contributed to our knowledge, was amazing, but they couldn't get past the language barrier. How many people like that are we letting in?
Too
8
many.
million.
Too
8
many.
million.
I find it very offensive. I don't know about you guys, but I think if you come in this country with an intention to assimilate, you learn the language. I get very offended when I'm calling my local radio, TV, electric service, and I have to press 1 for English.
Oh, that makes me. You have to do it when you call the IRS. And when I got the person on the line, I said, "Why do I have to press 1 for English? Are you telling me non-English speakers are the majority of taxpayers in this country? Make them press a button." She didn't have anything.
You know, it's interesting as you're talking about the non-documented folks or whatever else, and you look at the government push, arm twisting or whatever else, to actually give out loans to these illegals that are coming in, and they're with there's nothing behind a loan, and who's going to pay those loans when those loans fail?
We are the
We
taxpayer.
Yes.
And the other thing, too, it's not only the illegals coming in high numbers, it's how rapidly this is happening. For example, Ellis Island was open for 40-some-odd years. During that period of time, they brought in approximately 15 million immigrants. 40 years. Those immigrants that came in, you could not come into this country unless you could either support yourself and had it verified, or you had a family member that stood up and said, "I will support this person." That's the first thing. But we have estimated now 10 to 12 million people who have come in 3 years, let's say 3 years since Biden came in, and he's going to be in office another year, and it's going to be another 3-4 million. So this is coming in, and no country can assimilate people at that rate.
And if they're coming in, quote, for asylum, I don't understand what kind of asylum they need from Mexico. I hadn't heard of any genocides going on there.
Okay. Folks, we're going to stop and take another quick break to hear from our sponsors and supporters. Again, this is CCTA Wake Up Call. Thank you for staying with us.
Torque Transmission and Automotive Repair is the transmission physician in the New Bern area. If you're experiencing transmission problems, call Charles Grover at 252-637-2399 or stop by the shop on 17 South in New Bern. Torque can install a new or reconditioned transmission, or they can rebuild your transmission if that's what you prefer. See Torque for a variety of minor automotive repairs like brakes, tune-ups, and water pump. You can count on Torque Transmission and Automotive Repair. Hey folks, here's a tip. When you think firearms and ammo, think East 70 Palm. They've been on Highway 70 east of New Bern across from the fairgrounds for 31 years. Drew Preston and his staff know firearms. Gun sales have tripled in under a year, and women shooters are the fastest growing part of their business. Their great inventory, over 300 guns in stock, changes daily. And if you want something they don't have, they'll look for it. New and used, rifles, shotguns, and pistols. Buy, sell, or trade. And they also have many holsters, scopes, and other gun accessories. Every member of the staff is deeply knowledgeable, and every one of them is an excellent shooter. So don't just come for the inventory. Come for the thoughtful advice. East 70 Palm, your home for firearms, ammo, and answers. Highway 70 East New Bern, across from the fairgrounds. Moore's Old Time Barbecue is slow cooked and smoked over hickory in the tradition of the Moore's family for over 70 years. Moore's also serves fried chicken, cooked to order seafood, and homemade side dishes. Open 7 days a week in New Bern, Winterville, Morehead City, Swansboro, and Jacksonville. Moore's will cater and deliver anywhere you want your truly traditional barbecue and fixings delivered. And remember, If it's not Moore's, it's less.
Welcome back. And again, thank you for listening to the sponsors and supporters. I'm going to go to Alan.
Thanks, Bob. We were just recently talking about the invasion issue, and that's exactly what it is. Intentional by the Biden administration right from the day they got in. And Texas has finally have had their fill of it. And Governor Abbott, whom I respect more and more every day, he took the position that if the federal government wasn't going to protect Texas from the invasion, then he had the responsibility as the governor to do that. So they started putting up barricades, razor wire, and so on. And what happened was there was a park near Eagle Pass where the federal Border Patrol people were processing people in. They weren't turning them away. They weren't blocking them. They were actually facilitating their admission, which is what the Biden administration wants. And so what Governor Abbott did, he sent the National Guard down there, and they put razor wire right across that park and stopped it. So what happened, the federal government went and appealed that and got a Supreme Court order to stay that so that they could come in and take that barbed wire down, that razor wire down. And of course, Governor Abbott has refused to do it. So now we're in a constitutional crisis where we have the federal government that theoretically has, not theoretically, but legally has the requirement to protect the borders of the country. They're not doing it. And so Governor Abbott is saying that constitutionally, every state who's being invaded has the responsibility and the authority to protect themselves. So that's what I understand of the issue. Is that what you understand, Pat?
I just want to mention that I did see a post on Facebook that said the razor wire identified as a large slinky. So therefore, it was not inhumane. I just want to
you
mention
get hung
that.
up in it.
Well, I do believe that there's gates and fences around the White House now that weren't there before, and I do believe that Nancy Pelosi's house had a fence and that it was breached and it caused all kind of trouble.
Yeah.
Funny, there's a double standard over who needs a fence. You know, you need a fence for your house, but not for your country. And we are protecting other countries' borders, but we're not protecting our own.
Right.
I think that whole ruling was interesting from the standpoint, it didn't say that Abbott couldn't put it up. It gave the federal government the right to take it down.
Yes.
And it didn't say he couldn't put up razor wire. So that's a significant distinction.
Yes, that's a big distinction.
And
because
I
a
believe-
lot of people understand that order to say that Texas can't put it up, but that's not what it says.
And I believe there's 17 states that have sent troops to Texas to
14.
help. 14, okay.
And then the thing is that the this barricade they put up is obviously effective, and it's going to have a tremendous political impact. If the Biden administration does what they've threatened to do, which is to take over the authority over the National Guard in Texas, which apparently they've done in the past. I think President Kennedy did that with a segregation integration order that was being refused by, I think it was Alabama or Mississippi. But anyway, if the Biden administration does that and they send troops there and to open up the border and let these people flood in, and Texas is trying to stop it, that will be a picture that I don't think the Biden administration wants to see happen. Politically, I mean, what is it, 85% of the people in the country are against this invasion, and then to see them just physically opening up the borders to let the people in. So I think that's an empty threat on Biden's part. Like a lot of his threats are empty threats.
Well, the Border Patrol has said they're not going to cut the wire. So they're taking the side of Texas.
Yeah.
So the political ramifications are ratcheting up. And the two justices, the two conservatives so-called, who voted with the 3 liberals were Amy Coney Barrett and John Roberts.
No surprise there.
No, and I'm kind of surprised at Barrett, but
Not me.
I wonder if the 5 of them considered the constitutional implications of starting us down a road to a civil war, because there's going to be a face-off. It's only a matter of when, not if, because Texas is not going to back down.
I'm going to suggest that every illegal that's coming in, that they've got to shuffle somewhere, bring them right to the steps of the Supreme Court.
Yeah. Well, that
I'm
would,
sorry, that's a suggestion.
yeah, well, it would help too.
That's
And
8 million people.
The other interesting thing about this is that Abbott also, and I think it was with the concurrence of their General Assembly or state legislature, they are now stating that an illegal alien coming into Texas is now under state law.
Mm-hmm.
Now, why is that important? It's important because now state employees and state law enforcement can arrest these people and they can deport them. Where traditionally what's happened, these are federal violations and they have to go through the DPI or whoever they go through that can actually deport them. But they're going to be able to deport them directly. And that is a big change, and it's going to be interesting to see how Biden deals with that between naps.
Well, they had been deporting them to places like Martha's Vineyard and things like that. I mean, now we're just going to send them back to where they came from.
Well, they weren't deported to Martha's Vineyard. They were shipped up there by Abbott because they said they were a sanctuary city.
And they were a sanctuary city until the illegals actually arrived, at which point they decided they weren't.
By the way, now going with Martha's Vineyard now is declared, what is it, a low-income area?
Oh, yes, because they wanted to get in some low-cost or government subsidy EV chargers.
Right.
So Martha's Vineyard, Montauk, New York, Fisher's Island, New York, have all been declared low income. Nantucket is another one. I wouldn't mind living in one of those $1 million low income houses.
I want to go back to the point that Alan was making about Texas being able to charge them with state crimes. The state crime they can charge them with, according to Texas, is trespass. So they go to jail for trespass. Now, when Arizona tried to enforce federal immigration law, the federal government took them to court, and the court agreed with the feds that only the feds can enforce immigration law.
That was under Obama, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So Arizona was, smacked down. Now, Arizona was trying to enforce the federal law. Texas is enforcing state law. That's a significant distinction. Mm-hmm. And so they're going to put them in prison. And I don't know about deporting them. I haven't read that, Alan.
Well, I had heard that after they served their sentence, they would deport them.
Well, good.
that was the plan. It was kind of like a two-step thing.
Well, I don't want to pay for their support to
No, me either.
put them in jail. I would just
deport
assume
them
you
right
deport them, immediately.
Well, I do know, going back to Arizona, Joe Arpaio apparently is running for sheriff again, and he's going to put them back in the pink pajamas, I guess it is.
Oh, that was good.
He's getting really old.
But still, the pink pajamas are pretty darn effective.
Can undertake that.
Okay. Where do we want to go from here?
I want an update on Fannygate.
Fannygate.
Okay. Folks, we're going right to the bottom of the pile. Go for it.
Yay. Okay, I read an article today, and this is the first time I've heard it called Fannygate, which makes me giggle. And this writer's point was to qualify as a first-rate American political scandal, the escapade should include 3 juicy elements: sex, money, and the abuse of power. And he makes a point that we have all 3. Fannie Willis and Nathan Wade hit the trifecta. So obviously sex, they've admitted they were having a personal relationship. Fannie has denied that he spent money on her. She said they paid separately, but that's not what the credit card receipts show. If she wants to say they split the money, I guess she's going to have to present some paperwork, some receipts that showed she reimbursed him, or, and we all know she doesn't have that.
Well, she might have reimbursed him in, what do they call, like kind?
In kind.
In kind.
In kind.
Shame on you.
Did I
Shame
say,
on you.
Did I say that?
Could you explain that a little bit more?
Please don't. The money dimensions intertwine with her power. She used her wide-ranging authority to hire her dear, dear friend and former mentor, Nathan Wade, to prosecute the case. And by the way, the judge worked for Fannie for a while, the divorce judge.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yes, he should have recused himself, but of course he hasn't. No judge, when Trump is involved, ever recuses themselves. So not only did she hire her friend, but he booked lavish vacations for them. She hired him without asking the county for permission. Now, when you're in the government and you're doing procurement and they have regulations, you have to go by the book. You can't just wave your wand and say, I'm going to hire this guy, which is what she did. Then she used federal money, which you can't, which was federal grant money. You cannot misuse grant money. She misused federal grant money, and the whistleblower that approached her to tell her, hey, he's misusing grant money, she fired her. Fortunately for the whistleblower, she taped one of the conversations she had with Fannie, and she's suing Fannie in a whistleblower lawsuit. That's going to come in handy. Jim Jordan up in Congress wants to know what she did with the federal dollars. The Georgia State Legislature, which is Republican, apparently, wants to investigate her, and they may want to impeach her. The county is investigating her to find out about this money thing.
She's
And
having a bad day.
She's having a big bad day.
But in addition to all that, this guy was not qualified for the position that she hired him for.
That's the point. And she claimed that when she was in that black church that she paid him all the same. Well, she's paid him $654,000, and she's only paid the other two $100,000. And the other two,
Prediction? Excuse me, Pat.
We're going to take it.
The time for break.
Well, I'm going to take a quick break, and we'll come back. We're not going to let this story go.
Since 1952, the North Carolina Fisheries Association has been working to ensure access for fishermen and consumers to enjoy fresh local seafood. The North Carolina Fisheries Association is for fair, science-based fisheries management for commercial and recreational fishermen. If you agree with this philosophy, become a member. For more information, log on to ncfish.org. For fresh North Carolina seafood, there's no better place than B&J Seafood, Highway 70 East in New Bern.
At Professional Auto Service, keeping vehicles in top form and running well isn't just their business, it's the passion of folks who work there. If baling and wire and duct tape is good enough, don't go near them. But if you take pride in your vehicle and reliability is important, go to 2215 Country Club Road in New Bern and let Professional Auto take care of your vehicle. You'll be pleased. That's Professional Auto Service, Country Club Road, New Bern.
Welcome back, and thank you again for listening to the sponsors and supporters. We're going right back to Fannygate.
Right back to Fannygate. All righty then. She was asked if the two of them were having an affair, and they were required to file an answer to that question, and she grudgingly admitted the obvious. She said they had a personal relationship. But she also filed a document with the Georgia Superior Court saying the, quote, salacious allegations about her and Willis were without merit. That's a classic non-denial denial. The old Nixon campaign crowd would be proud. Do you remember in the Watergate film about what's his name, Woodward and Bernstein, where Robert Redford character went to a court hearing, and it was the arraignment of the 4 Cuban burglars, and he heard something, they were saying something, and he told his partner, that was a non-denial denial. Like, we didn't deny it, but we did not deny it.
I think it depends what the meaning of is.
That's
We
a
all
good one.
remember that.
Well, here's another little. This thing has many, many facets. One of the facets is when Jocelyn Wade, because he filed divorce the day before he was appointed by Fannie of his wife of 26 years, and he had drained their accounts of all this $654,000 and didn't leave her anything to live on. And she had been a stay-at-home mom for 26 years. So the divorce right then starts out nasty. In fact, she was the one that wanted the credit card receipts that have been made public, that were filed in the court. She wanted to make sure that those were public knowledge.
Which shows intent, if he drained all the accounts.
Oh, sure. But they were supposed to be, Fannie and he were both supposed to be deposed in the divorce case. And Wade ended up making a emergency agreement with his wife not to have to do that. He made it the night before. So they didn't have to do it in the divorce. They're going to have to do it in the upcoming hearing, which is February 15th. But Fannie's response to the wife was to threaten her with a criminal charge of attempting to interfere with her prosecution of Trump. So obstruction of justice, basically.
I thought you were going to say interfere with her affair.
That's a given. That's a given. Neither Wade nor Willis has denied the trips together.
It's just interesting how people with power get away with things on one side of the aisle, but not the other side of the aisle. I mean, we've got all this direct evidence, and everybody's defending her, but you've got this woman in New York who was accusing Trump of rape on a day she can't remember in a store dressing room. I just
The year
don't.
she can't remember. She can't even remember the year, and she was on the cover of Vogue magazine wearing a dress that she said was the dress she was wearing the day he raped her, and somebody did research on it. It turns out the dress wasn't even manufactured yet.
Double standards drive me nuts.
Well, if it was a criminal case, he's entitled to know the date and time, because otherwise he can't have an alibi. How can he prove I was somewhere else when she says that happened?
Well, why can't he sue her for defamation?
Because the courts are closed to Trump.
Well, that's,
He's
again,
filed other defamation cases which are dismissed out of hand. So he'd just be throwing his good money after bad.
Well, what's so troubling about that case, amongst many things, is that the statute of limitations had already expired. So the General Assembly, the state legislature, they altered the statute of limitations so that that alleged incident would be covered. That's the first thing. The second thing is that there was, here Trump was accused of defamation when all he said was she was lying. If someone accuses you of a crime and you're innocent, now you're going to be accused of defamation if you deny it and call the person a liar. Well, if it's not true, she is a liar.
He called her a whack job.
Whack job, that's okay too. I mean, the point is, this freedom of speech. So what this does, it undermines our entire freedom of speech if we now label as defamation anything that you say that defends yourself.
well, I don't know how any rape happens or any sexual assault happens in a store dressing room without somebody hearing something or a woman walking out disheveled and upset.
Yeah.
It makes zero sense, and anybody with an iota of brain cells could figure that one out.
Well,
But
not
they
only
tried this with Kavanaugh, too. where they talked about this high school incident that they couldn't remember when, and she couldn't remember where it was, and
Blasey Ford.
yeah, they've, this is not a new tactic.
Well, she said a woman walking out disheveled and upset. Trump gets inordinate amount of attention wherever he goes. So if he was in a women's changing room in any store, somebody would have seen him there, and somebody would have remembered it.
Yes.
Or she would have told somebody.
Except we can't remember the date, yeah, so.
Yeah. Or the year.
Now, I'm going to recommend everybody go and find an old movie, and I say old, it's 10, 11, 12 years old, but Bernie is the name of the movie, starring Jack Black, Shirley MacLaine, Matthew McConaughey, or whatever else, and it's about a true incident in Carthage, Texas, I think it was, that there was a guy that had been employed, Jack Black, as an undertaker's assistant or something like that, and he befriended some person in the town who was horrible, and, well, should I expose the movie or whatever?
Go ahead.
Okay, so finally, he got mad at her or whatever else, and he shot her. Well, he put her in a freezer. But the town was so happy that she was gone. Everybody in the town was so happy, and that this is wonderful. And by the way, the town of Carthage is where Matthew McConaughey is from, and his mom is in the movie. And then there's a lot of local folks in the movie. They had to move the what was it?
The change of venue.
Change of venue for the trial, because they knew they could never get a guilty verdict in that town, even though he admitted doing it. The town was so happy to see her gone.
I tried a case like that in one of my counties. That county had almost, within memory, had not seen a criminal trial ever. And I knew I was going to lose because this kid's grandmother was universally loved in that town. And even though it was a sexual crime, he got off. Almost, jury didn't take very long to say, but that's so-and-so's grandson.
Well, Bernie did go to jail. He was let out on parole. I think he's still alive.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And but you need to watch the movie, because it kind of points out he was a very sympathetic character, and I don't understand why he didn't plead temporary insanity, because she would have driven anyone insane. But I mean, it really gets you thinking about, he did something horrible, but he's such a sympathetic character that it's hard to look at it that way.
There we go with Bob's comment about people looking at emotions instead of facts.
Yes,
The jury is
absolutely.
supposed to consider facts, and in fact, the prosecutor is not allowed to inflame their emotions. They're not even allowed to ask them, well, how would you feel if you were in this position? Because that's a mistrial.
Pat, that feeds into my question. My question was, how do the Georgia Joe average, how do they feel about this news about Fannie and her fiasco?
I haven't seen an article that talks about that.
Wouldn't you think that there'd be some local outcry there, even from the Republican or conservatives? Wouldn't they see the hypocrisy there, and wouldn't they be calling for, quote, justice?
Well, apparently the legislature does, because the legislature wants to, they've already formed a committee to investigate her, and the House wants to impeach her. So the legislature is riled up about it. Now, they may have heard from their constituents.
That's where I think the pressure needs to come, is from the constituency, because I always bring it up that we, the people, and we're supposed to be governed with the consent of the governed, and it sure doesn't seem like that's happening.
Yeah. Another thing that's involved in this case is that Nathan Wade traveled to D.C. and met with Biden and DOJ.
More than once.
More than once, twice, and he billed the DA's office 24 hours for one of those visits. Can you tell me that he was talking to these people for 24 hours?
It was 24 hours of his time, you silly girl. You know, he had to drive to the airport. He had to get on a plane. He had to go eat in a restaurant someplace.
And he was
No,
talking.
that's not how it works. You can only bill for attorney work.
He was talking to himself the whole time.
Yeah,
so.
only if you're honest.
Only if you're honest. Well, I think we've already seen stuff that intimates that he's not honest. But one of the problems with this case is that acknowledging any political interference would fatally undermine the cases against Trump, boost the former president politically, damage an already beleaguered Biden administration, erode faith in the Department of Justice, and violate our nation's constitutional protections against judicial bias and political prosecutions. That's pretty heavy stakes for this case.
There's a lot of stuff
Right.
in the balance.
Since she went to the black church and introduced racism, that the only reason she and Wade were being criticized was because they were black. When Trump adopted Michael Roman's motion to get rid of Fannie and to dismiss the case, he introduced the racism count, saying it's impossible for him to get a fair trial in Atlanta and maybe anywhere in Georgia.
Wow. Folks, we're going to wrap up the show again today. By the way, again, I want to ask you to go to the cctaxpayers.com website. I'm going to ask you to see the link that says 2024 primary election, and there we've got some questionnaires answers from questionnaires for a number of the candidates, all the way from school committees all the way up to the governor office. Again, thank you for staying with us. This is CCTA Wake Up Call. Thank you.
Torque Transmission and Automotive Repair is the transmission physician in the New Bern area. If you're experiencing transmission problems, call Charles Grover at 252-637-2399 or stop by the shop on 17 South in New Bern. Torque can install a new or reconditioned transmission, or they can rebuild your transmission if that's what you prefer. See Torque for a variety of minor automotive repairs like brakes, tune-ups, and water pump. You can count on Torque Transmission and Automotive Repair.
The God and Country Christian Alliance has a simple mission, but it is a profound one. They want to inform and educate the public on issues of moral and political concern. They want to restore the Judeo-Christian values upon which this nation was founded to all levels of government. And they want to encourage and activate pro-family voters. Simple, but not easy. The God and Country Christian Alliance meets the third Monday of every month at Moore's Barbecue on MLK in New Bern. Meetings begin promptly at 7 p.m. and end by 8:30. To enjoy dinner with the group before the meeting, arrive between 6 and 6:30. Both the food and the company are good. Meetings include speakers and discussion, and their annual banquets are legendary. Join them on the third Monday of each month for a refreshingly candid view of the world and our place in it.
Just who are these people doing this CCTA program? They're people like you, a photographer, someone that ran their own business, someone retired from the military. Just people in the community that love this country and have a desire to do their part to lower taxes and shrink government, to protect individual liberty, and to preserve the U.S. Constitution and free enterprise system. We welcome you to come out to a meeting. If you like what you see and hear, there's a place where you can contribute to the cause. To learn more, go to cctaxpayers.com. That's cctaxpayers.com. The group meets every third Tuesday at Stanley Hall Ballroom in downtown New Bern to enjoy a fantastic speaker and report on CCTA activities since the last meeting. If you've been disappointed with rising taxes and government intrusion, don't just complain. Join Coastal Carolina Taxpayers Association and make your voice heard.